So without taking up too much more time, I do want to begin by introducing our dean, Dean Hempton. And Dean Hempton is going to talk to you all a bit, and at the end, he's been generous enough to also open the floor for questions that you may have. So you're really in for a treat. So I'll just go ahead and read a little bit about him, and then I'll invite him up. Dean Hempton, Dean David Hempton, was appointed Dean of Harvard Divinity School in July 2012. Before joining the Faculty of Divinity in spring 2007, he was university professor and professor of the history of Christianity at Boston University. And prior to that appointment, he was professor of modern history and director of the School of History in Queen's University, Belfast. He is also the author of many articles and books, and you can read more about all of his publications on our website. Dean Hempton is a social historian of religion with particular expertise in populist traditions of evangelicalism in Europe, North America, and beyond. He is a fellow of the Royal Historical Society. In recent years, he has delivered the F.D. Maurice Lectures at King's College in London, held a fellowship of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and was HDS's Outstanding Teacher of the Year in 2008. And that was a distinction that was awarded to him by our students. Dean Hempton has research and teaching interests in religion and political culture, identity and ethnic conflict, the interdisciplinary study of lived religion, comparative secularization in Europe and North America, the history and theology of evangelical Protestantism, and the rise of global Christianity in the modern period. So without further ado, Dean David Hempton.
Thanks, Prudence, very much, and thanks everyone for making this day possible. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming to HDS and being here so early in the morning. So I hope you can stay awake for a little bit longer. So I'm David Hempton, Dean of the Divinity School, and I've enjoyed meeting many of you already, actually, at dinner last night, and I look forward to seeing many more of you over lunch today. It's a busy day for us. We also have the Ingersoll Lecture at Harvard. Russell Banks, a novelist and poet, is speaking later in the day and conducting a seminar. So there'll be a lot of things going on. So just like to reiterate the encouragement for you to make the best possible use of the time you have with us today. Panel presentations, conversations with faculty, staff, and students are great resources for you to get to know our school and its programs. You'll hear from faculty about degree programs, from students and administrators about student life here and the services available to you. This afternoon, I think you'll also have the chance to visit the Center for the Study of World Religions across the street, which is a very valuable resource for scholars to live, study, and work together. So do make the best of the day. So I'd like to just spend some time highlighting some of the things that I believe make HDS unique and why you might really consider coming here and joining us. So here are 10 reasons why you might want to come here. And the first is, why not? I have a fellow dean at Harvard in the School of Public Health who was actually a cabinet minister in the Mexican government, but he starts addresses like this by saying that he's the dean of a great school and a great university. And I think that's a good way of putting it for the Divinity School. It's a great school in its own right, but it is part of a great university, which makes it a better school and makes the university a better university. So those two things together, I think, are really important. So the first is why not? The second is that Harvard, as you know, is America's oldest university and one of the great universities in the world. Last week it was listed as the best university in the world by the U.S. News and World U.S. News and World Report. We always mention the ones that list us top. There are no other ones, believe me. And of course these rankings have all kinds of things associated with them. But it is nevertheless, whatever way you reckon it, an extraordinary place to be. So the Divinity School not only has its own rich history and traditions, and soon we'll be celebrating our 200th anniversary. The school was founded in 1816, so it's already has a distinguished history. But we're situated in a university city of 10 graduate schools and a major research institute. There's always something amazing happening here at Harvard, almost always too much happening. So the problem, if you were to come, is really working out how to pick and choose your opportunities, but there really are astonishing opportunities. We're also members of the Boston Theological Institute, which opened up another feast of opportunities for courses and conversations. This is a partnership of the other Boston Divinity and Theological schools that our students take courses in, and vice versa. Some of their students come here. So with the combination of wider Harvard and wider Boston, it is really a place of almost unlimited opportunity for study. And we in the Divinity School are very much part of President Faust's One Harvard vision, and are busily developing connections with the other parts of Harvard, which is a real priority for us in the years ahead. So that's the second. You would be part, I think, of a great tradition here at the Divinity School, but also part of a great university. Third, you will have access to one of the world's great library systems, 70 libraries and 17 million volumes and counting. Even the most avid of readers among you will struggle to get through 17 million. So it's a most remarkable resource for teachers and students alike. This may seem like, why is this important? But really, when you come and start working on research papers, or you have some ideas that you want to chase up, there really is no better place that I know of in the world that's for its library system. A couple of years ago, I finished writing a book on, it was a book on the rise of early modern Christianity globally, and had to start finding out about things I knew nothing about, which is a lot. China, Africa, India, Asia, parts of the world that I hadn't studied much before, and I was tremendously struck by the library resources. Just so easy to get materials in some of these great libraries around Harvard. So it is, believe me, an enormous resource. It may just feel like something that's just being said by a dean when you're sitting there, but when you come, you will be absolutely delighted with those resources. Fourth, you will come to an already diverse and eclectic place, and we would love it to be even more diverse and eclectic. Our 2014 entering class was comprised of 22% of international students, 27% students of color, and an almost exact 50-50 gender balance, and way over 20 religious traditions. So it's an extraordinarily diverse divinity school. I think one of the most diverse divinity schools in the world. You would certainly add to that diversity were you were to come. It's also a place that takes religious pluralism seriously in a world that seriously needs it. We're in the fortunate position to have at least 3 distinguished faculty members in 5 of the world's great religious traditions: Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Judaism. We also have scholars working on indigenous religious traditions in Latin America, Cuba, Australia, and West Africa. America's world-famous Religious Pluralism Project was started at Harvard under the leadership of my colleague Diana Eck, and continues to thrive here. So that diversity is reflected in the faculty, and is reflected in the range of courses that you would have open to you in all of these world religious traditions. Fifth, I think you will come to a place with a distinguished faculty who are at the forefront of their subjects and disciplines. And we're always seeking to strengthen that faculty year by year and have aspirations along those lines for the future. We've recently appointed 2 new faculty members in American Religious History, David Holland and Catherine Brakes, a faculty member in Ethics and Christian Thought, Mark Jordan, and another in Ministry Studies and Theology, Michelle Sanchez. We're currently searching for another scholar in Islamic Studies and, with a specialism in Southeast Asia, and plan to hire more faculty in ethics as the years go on, including a new chair that we've been endowed with in religion, business ethics, and the economic order. Every year we also have exciting visiting professors from all over the United States and the world who come here to teach and do their research. Harvard is a magnet for scholars for some of the reasons I've mentioned before, just the intellectual climate and the library facilities and the manuscript resources. In particular, each year, 5 new associates come to the Women's Studies and Religion program, which is just situated across the way. And that's been going now for 25 years or more, so over 100 mostly young women at early stages in their academic careers have come there to finish books and launch their careers in the United States and beyond, but also teach our students here. They offer a course, and they also have transformed the landscape of women in religious studies in the United States collectively over that period of time. So there are always interesting people coming through town, both as visitors for a year and sometimes on shorter terms. Sixth, you will enter a culture in which successful students are self-guided and self-directed. So come and be prepared to knock on doors, badger your professors, celebrate your achievements, prepare seriously for what you want to do next. So there are many resources at your disposal here, and one of the things that I hear a lot as dean as I meet alums is just the extraordinary relationships that were built up with some of our faculty year by year. Sometimes they're different faculty according to the interests of students, but it is a faculty I think that is especially devoted to teaching and to being on site and to be with you in your studies. And we have an advising system that tries to maximize those benefits. Seventh, whatever the program you choose, we have a very strong record of placing our students, whether in field education programs in the United States and beyond, or in the top doctoral programs in the United States, or in full-time employment. So our alums do go out into extraordinary areas, either in academic life or in the wider world. Eighth, HDS has a vigorous alumni network. Check out videos online in which former alumni talk about their time at HDS, their career paths, which sometimes led them to unforeseen and wonderful new directions. Or join our alumni events all over the United States. So there is a vigorous network that you would, in due course, become part of. Ninth, HDS is committed to understanding how religion plays out in the wider world. Of all 10 graduate schools at Harvard, we have the highest percentage of courses that touch on international themes and issues. And this is something that we are eagerly trying to develop. We know that we have a responsibility as generators of knowledge about religion and religious traditions across the world at a time when we think that knowledge is increasingly vital for the world order, for the reasons that you all know about. On Monday morning of this week, we had a breakfast with Jerry White, his name might be known to some of you. He is now the associate director in the State Department of the Bureau of Conflict and Stabilization. Jerry White's an interesting person, actually. He, on a hiking trip to Israel as a young man, he went off the trail and stood on a landmine and nearly lost his life. He lost his leg and was very seriously injured. Devoted himself after that to an international organization to ban landmines, which he energetically promoted around the world with great success. That organization won the Nobel Peace Prize, deservedly. And he's now at the State Department thinking about the sort of problems we're also thinking about of religion, conflict in the world order, and what might make a difference. So we're thinking hard about how we can help in that enterprise. Dana Eck and I have been hosting this year a new colloquium on religions and the practices of peace, to see how we can think more about those things in a better way. So we are eager not just to be part of one Harvard, but also to be part of a global constituency of how we can begin to make a difference. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, you would be coming to a school with a thriving intellectual culture and a commitment to high levels of service. Highlights of this semester alone include our annual graduate student conference on ways of knowing, which brings together the largest graduate student population working on religion in the United States. Today we have the Ingersoll Lecture by the eminent novelist Russell Banks on capitalism and children. In a few weeks' time, we will entertain President Jimmy Carter to speak about his new book on religion and the global oppression of women and what needs to be done or could be done. We have hosted some extraordinary events already, including, I think, a very powerful session handled by our own students who went down to Ferguson, Missouri, and reported back on their experiences and what it meant for our school. And there are really dozens of events going on in our campus and in other campuses at Harvard, in the other graduate schools all the time. So it is a thriving intellectual culture that I think you would find very stimulating. So I sincerely hope you do decide to apply to us. I know that there are many other wonderful divinity schools around the country. Since I have friends in many of them, I will say nothing bad about any of them. They're wonderful places. We think we have a number of unique characteristics that make it an especially attractive place to come and study. We would love to have you bring your unique and special gifts to HDS and thereby further enrich what is, I think, everyone will say is a very special community here. So thank you very much for your patient listening. I can spend some time taking some questions now. So don't be shy, just ask away. My accent is Irish, by the way, so you can get that out of the way. I'm not answering any more questions on that. So any questions? Be glad to have them. My goodness. Yep.
So my interest really peaked when you mentioned the newly endowed chair of business ethics.
Yeah.
Maybe unpack a little bit how that came about, what the trajectory is going to be?
Sure, that's a great question. So it's part of, I think one of the things that I hear from our current students a lot is a desire for us in the Divinity School to be reaching out as widely as we can to the other Harvard graduate schools. And some of those schools have, in some respects, an easier narrative to tell. You know, if you're studying business, you're studying business. If you're studying law, you're studying law. If you're studying medicine, you're studying medicine. I know there's plenty of varieties within all of those things. But for our students to say we're studying divinity or we're at the Divinity School often requires follow-up questions and answers. Because people do have misconceptions about, the kind of place this is. So we're really trying to reach out more and more to those other schools in the spirit of the One Harvard. And one of those is obviously the business school. Now, traditionally, there's been, I think, a good deal of misunderstanding between the world of business and people studying religion. A lot of people in working in a school like this are often quite critical of capitalism or business or the top 1% or however it might be. And a lot of people in business schools are, don't spend a lot of their time thinking about what the Divinity School is doing. Maybe before the crash they should have spent more time thinking about those things. So we've been very keen to build relationships there, and a number of our alums teach in the business school now who are helping us. Nitin Noria, the dean of the business school, is really a tremendous dean and who's interested in these things around business and business ethics and the world order. So we were in the fortunate position of being able to persuade a donor to endow a new chair to help crossing the Charles, as it were, to that campus on the other side of the river. So within a year, we'll be searching for that chair, and it's on religion, business ethics, and the world order. And what's really, and the economic order. And what's really great about it is that we've already had some good conversations around the donor, myself, the dean of the business school, and planning some more interactions this coming month where one of our alums who teaches in the business school is putting together a package of student questions about what do business school students think about divinity or religion or the school, and similarly, what do our students think about what they do. And so we're going to host a dinner with some of the business school professors, including the dean, some students, and some students from here, and some of our faculty, really to thrash these things out more and to see if we can't build better partnerships. One of the questions that's already surfaced from the business school students, some have said quite honestly that when they mention religion or faith or a faith tradition that they might have in the business school, in any kind of public discourse, that it can be almost a kind of silencing thing because that's regarded as something private or to the side and shouldn't get in the way of the real business of business. And how to think better about that, so that people don't have to segment their lives or don't bracket them or put them on hold or feel they can't talk about it or whatever. So I think as the years go on, we want to, build a closer connection. And that wouldn't be just true of the business school, but also the Kennedy School is an obvious partner for us, and the law school also. So if you do come here, do come as ambassadors into bigger Harvard. And I think you'll find the doors are pretty wide open in a way that they weren't certainly in the 90s when I'm in my day job, I'm still working on secularization, on a book on comparative secularization in Europe and the United States. And I do think when I was a graduate student and a young professor, the secularization paradigm was an accepted thing, really, that, that Western Europe and then the United States were just inexorably becoming more secular and the rest of the world would follow. Not many people believe that any longer. And that has opened up really fresh opportunities for us, I think. Not just fresh opportunities in a kind of opportunistic sense, but kind of fresh responsibilities in a real sense of just how important these issues are in the world order and how little we know about them. I mean, even people one talks to in the State Department often say that they the training on religious knowledge amongst State Department officials is still lagging behind some other areas that, and really that now shouldn't be the case. We really need, I mean, that situation is changing very rapidly actually, which is great, and I think it will continue to change. Yep.
When we were talking about business, I specifically wanted to bring up the issue of secularization, and as I was looking at Harvard Divinity School, I noticed that, oh, thank you. I noticed that people study that here, or at least somebody does.
Yes.
So I looked it up a little to find out more about it because, so I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about how that field is important alongside studies that people who are faithful take seriously. Like how is the secularization study important to people who are also believe or know?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So I've been interested in this subject for a long time, and I do think that, last May we had a conference here at Harvard Divinity School on comparative secularization in Europe and the United States, and a book will come out of that quite soon, of the papers and so on. But I do believe that it's so how should I answer this? I think one of the problems I really see, so the old secularization paradigm was that it was a product of modernization, and that Western Europe was first as a modern technological society. The United States would go that way because it's like a gas cloud, and then the rest of the world, as it modernized and as the global community became more global, it would spread everywhere, almost like gas. Now, no one really believes that any longer. I mean, the most recent work really is suggesting that Western Europe secularized for quite specific reasons, and that the most secular places in the world are Western Europe and American social elites. Not the entire United States, but social elites in the United States. So one of the problems with that, I think, is that social elites, even in places like Harvard or State Departments or New York Times bureaus or wherever you think of, often those constituencies are more secular than the rest of the country and the rest of the world. And that often breeds a perception gap in understanding the role of religion in the world order. Western European leaders and American social elites framing policy on the world order often do not know how to think well about religion. And you can see that in the language that's used, the policies that are framed, the attitudes that are on display. And that needs to change, and change pretty quickly, I think, because it is damaging to the world order. So I see it as one of my responsibilities as Dean of a Divinity School to get religious belief and practice and its importance in the world order on the radar screens of people who ordinarily don't think it's important. You know, all these global survey data that's being pumped out now suggests that something like 85% of the world's population declare religion to be a primary organizing feature of their lives. And how we understand that and how we cope with it, especially in a country which I think has been accustomed to the separation of church and state and the growing privatization in some respect of religion, those are big questions. So we do need to go on thinking about that. I hope this will be a great space to do it and to study with people who are interested in these kinds of issues. Any other? There was someone over here. Yeah.
You mentioned Harvard's strong placement of
students. Yeah.
And I'm wondering what, if any, professional development programs are available through the Divinity School?
Well, that's a question that might be better answered later today, actually. I mean, you have a panel on that, but do you want to?
I can say that we're really the one divinity school that has a career services office that provides a lot of resources for students. And range of careers that our students explore is quite varied. We provide lots of resources to try to address the various interests that our students have. We also, during the school year, offer a number of skill-based workshops for students to gain, sort of complement the curriculum at HDS. So our students are taking budgeting, finance courses, conflict resolution, to name a few. So we try to do those things throughout the academic year and even during the January term to provide sort of more skill-based training along with what the Career Services Office offers. And so I would encourage you to visit the office and sort of see what's offered there. And like Dean Hempton said, we'll be sort of touching on this throughout the day as well today.
Thanks very much, Maritza. Any other? There was one there and then one here. Yeah.
What's one recent challenge that the Divinity School has faced, and how did it overcome it?
A recent challenge. The big, I think, recent challenge for us is Harvard does not have a undergraduate religion department. That makes it unusual amongst American universities. Although one might see that at first sight as a weakness, I think it has been a strength for us in a way, because in many American universities with old divinity schools, new religion departments got formed, and the relationships between the divinity school and the religion department have often been strained, along the lines that, you know, religion is somehow an objective academic discipline. Divinity schools are interested in theology and ministry and so on. I don't think that's a helpful distinction, at least not as cut and dried as that. It's like saying, you know, a law school should only be studying the law academically and should never be interested in the practice of the law or thinking about helping people prepare for legal careers. Similarly with business. So the challenge facing us then at Harvard is to construct an undergraduate religion curriculum that really uses the strengths of a school like the Divinity School. And so we've put together, I think, a very imaginative set of structural arrangements, constructing a new committee in the study of religion, which will be an interfaculty, inter-school enterprise, but with our faculty, I think, taking the lead, because we teach about half the courses in the undergraduate religion curriculum now, and that will increase. So one challenge for us, I think, is how we continue to maintain our distinctive mission and vision as a divinity school, but really engage with the wider university, including the undergraduate curriculum in religion, the business school, the law school, or whatever. So as a dean, that's a challenge that we're trying to meet and overcome. What's made it easier, I think, is, and I can say this quite genuinely without any sense of just propaganda, is that the president of the university, Drew Fowles, is an extraordinary person, and the other deans have been very helpful in thinking our way through these things and making these structures work. So I guess for me, the biggest challenge has been that, you know, how to preserve, especially as we come up to our 200th anniversary and celebrate who we have been, but also, I think, how we build out from here into wider Harvard and into the wider world. I mean, another big challenge, I think, is that one. How do we step up to the challenge of thinking about religion, teaching it, modeling it, sending our students out into the world equipped to deal with a very pluralistic religious world order that is also quite conflicted. So how to build those tools of interacting with people of other religious traditions in a way that is built upon not just a kind of lowest common denominator syncretism, but some kind of serious encounter with other living religious traditions in a way that we can respect them. There was a question here. Yeah.
I'm curious about the Buddhist ministry initiative.
Yeah.
If you could speak more about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, you probably will get better information from Janet Gyatso later, who's our Dean for Academic Affairs, who really is at the center of that initiative, and Cheryl Giles, I think, maybe here as well. But basically, this initiative really was an attempt to think about our MDiv program in terms of how it might operate for another religious tradition. And we got, fortunately, some really good grant aid to work on Buddhist ministry. So it's part of the MDiv curriculum, but obviously with courses constructed and directed towards Buddhist ministry and what that might look like. I've heard Janet Gyatso speak really wonderfully about this, and for her, I think that the exciting thing about that initiative was how much of it came from the students and how much her own way of thinking about Buddhist ministry was student-directed at the start. So it is an example, I think, of how I think quite extraordinary things can happen here, coming from the student body as well as from the faculty, because she had not, set out to do that when she came to Harvard Divinity School. That's not what she came to do in the first instance, but it's something that she's really, I think, enjoyed immensely. Are there any other things to be said about that initiative, or?
I would just add that part of that initiative is where we bring Buddhist monks to the school for a year to study, and so they are part of our community and taking courses, and so it's an exchange of between them and our students. And so this year we have 5 months here on our campus taking courses and part of our community, which they've been a wonderful addition.
Yeah, they really have been. They're wonderful people. One of the things I have to do as dean is live in that nice house across the way, because the president insists on it. But it's you'll see if you come to the Divinity School, we have these breakfast for students, and you can see into the back part of this little courtyard, lawn, or yard, you call them in this country, that borders on the Center for the Study of World Religion on the right, the Women's Studies and Religion program on the left, and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences that way. So one morning recently, just having a cup of coffee, I saw a little trail of Buddhist monks in these wonderful outfits wandering across and I thought, and these are really wonderful people, and I thought possibly only at Harvard Divinity School could such a sight, but so it's been a very exciting program here, but if you do get a chance, I would talk to Janet Gyatso or Charlie Hallisey or Cheryl Giles, who are much more deeply involved in it than I am. Any other? Yeah.
I have a comment and a question. My first comment is I appreciate and sort of applaud you guys for still trying to recruit people to come in, because as a number one school, you don't have to. And I think that's awesome. But my question is, what kind of conversations that the school is having regarding non-access areas in the world and administering in certain contexts?
Administering to what context?
In non-access world areas where maybe say there's heightened religious intolerance and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, and I think obviously most of the people that we train in the ministry program here work in the United States or if they work overseas, work with NGOs or as appointments by the State Department or whatever. So to my knowledge, and I stand to be corrected, we're still not training an enormous number of ministers to work as ministers in other parts of the world. And in a way, that's pretty obvious. In a way, I mean, if you're coming from globally from an Islamic or Buddhist or Hindu background, why would you come west to study your religious tradition in order to go back? So, so as I said, I think most of the people that we train who work overseas are working overseas in a vocational sense, but not in a direct ministry sense, with NGOs, with the State Department, with other organizations like that. So I don't know if that's, is that a fully accurate answer? Yes. Yeah, so thanks. Maybe one last question? How are we doing? Yeah, we've got a minute left. Yeah.
Just like the Buddhist programs, do you have an extensive Judaism program, especially for Christians or people of other faiths interested in Judaism?
Yeah, we do. I mean, both within the school. And what's a really exciting thing, I think, about Harvard is that what you get a chance to do is interact with some scholars outside the Divinity School who are specialists in this area in FAS, the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. So there really is a big strength in Judaism at Harvard. There's been a long history of strength in that area. So I think for me, that's one of the exciting things about being here. Any Divinity School is going to have a limited number of faculty. I mean, we have about 45 plus a whole bunch of visitors and emeriti. But the wonderful thing about Harvard is that is just multiplied. I mean, in this committee in the study of religion, for example, we've identified about 100 scholars at Harvard with primary interest in religion who can teach in this committee, and that's a lot. So, I mean, that strength across these religious traditions is I think, maybe unmatched in the United States. So I think you will definitely find the opportunity to work with scholars in Judaism and Hebrew Bible here. Yeah. So that's maybe it. I see I'm going to hold you up from your next bed. So, look, thanks so much. Enjoy your day. I'll see you at lunch. Yeah.